Hello everyone, this is Kat and welcome back to My Hero Academia Podfic. This will be the continuation of Fallen Baby Birds. This will be Part 5, Chapter 5, entitled Touya Todoroki. Aizawa never thought too much about it when Isuku never talked about his quirk. He thought that maybe talking about it would bring back bad memories, that perhaps Izuku's parents didn't like the boy's quirk and that was the reason why they abandoned him. So he never questioned it. Not until the boy would be ready to talk about it, of course. Now, with Izuku's reaction to finding out that he did in fact have a quirk, it explains so much. The 5-year-old was bawling his eyes out, and at first it had been out of joy, but now he can't seem to stop. Something most likely triggering Izuku and making him hyperventilate. Shit. Zuzu, try to match my breathing, hun, Hizashi says in an overly gentle tone, holding the kid in his arms while sitting on the couch. Izuku was trying his hardest, despite feeling overwhelmed with everything today. He lets out a whine, and Hizashi shushes him softly. The usually loud man leaves a light kiss on the green curls of the boy's head, helping him to settle down enough for the kiddo to get a better hold on his breathing. Aizawa sits down beside Hizashi, raising a hand to wipe away the tears on Izuku's chubby, freckled face, and he holds in a sigh when Izuku looks over to him with wide, glistening eyes. Do you, Izuku takes in a big gulp of breath, trying not to sound breathless as he speaks, though his voice remains quiet and meek. What's my quirk? No idea, kiddo. Aizawa runs a hand through Izuku's curls soothingly. All we know is that you have one from your doctor's appointments, though now that I think about it, they never did think to ask us what your quirk was, did they? Kind of unprofessional, considering that they would need to know what a person's quirk is in order to help someone the correct way. Someone is probably getting fired, Aizawa thinks, resisting the urge to frown deeper. We'll figure it out. Hizashi gives Izuku a smile when their eyes meet. I'm sure your big brother will be happy to help you out, too, Izuku doesn't nod, but his chest does feel lighter at the thought of Keigo. And if it's a weak quirk, you thought The boy takes a deep breath, not seeing the concerned glint in his parents' eyes. You thought I had a quirk, but if I had no quirk or a weak quirk, would you still let me stay? Aizawa has to lay a hand on Hizashi's shoulder, so the man wouldn't tense up. They knew what had happened to Izuku was bad, but this implies... No need to be angry anymore, Aizawa thinks and closes his eyes. The boy's parents were gone. Izuku, can you look at me? Hizashi questioned softly, and encouragingly, the 5-year-old reluctantly meeting Hizashi's gaze. No matter what quirk you have, even if you don't have one at all, we love you, okay? We won't stop loving you just because of a quirk. Quirk or no quirk, we love you for you, so yes, of course you get to stay, all right? We never wanted you to leave in the first place, baby bunny. Hizashi's right, and he's usually not. Aizawa hums sarcastically, earning a little quirk of Izuku's lips and an offended squawk from Hizashi. We love you, and I'm positive that Keigo will be telling you the exact same thing when you ask him, and I know you're going to ask him because you want your big brother's opinion, don't you? Izuku's cheeks flush in embarrassment, but he lets himself smile nonetheless. I love you too, Isuku responds, still overwhelmed as he rests his head against Hizashi's cheek and takes Aizawa's hand with his smaller one. His dad squeezes his hand reassuringly, and his papa rubs circles with his thumb onto his back. And Isuku pauses, considering his next words. If I wanted to, I can be a hero. Quirk or without one. Aizawa's eyes softened further. Of course, kiddo. If you want to be a hero or anything else in the future, we'll support you. It'll be hard, of course, no matter what you choose to do. Isuku stares at Aizawa with stars in his eyes. But I'll help you. Hizashi will help you, and once again Keigo will help you. Even if you have to ask him yourself, he will. His dad smiles at him when Isuku lets out a breath of relief. He turns his attention up at his papa, and Hizashi gives the biggest of smiles that he can. Show's right, as always apparently. Hizashi mumbles partly, and Izuku lets out a giggle as Aizawa's non-threatening glare is sent to his husband. But yeah, little bunny, I'll be here. We'll all be here. Your loving and chaotic family at your side. The loud man lifts Izuku off his lap and sits in between himself and Aizawa on the couch. Now, before Keigo gets back home, any homework you need to get done? Izuku seems grateful for the subject change, despite wanting so desperately to know what his quirk was, and he shakes his head. Miss Rainbow said to go home and to think about our favorite heroes so that we can draw them tomorrow. The 5-year-old hums, hands now gripping both of his dad's hands. You do have a favorite hero, then? Aizawa questions, and Izuku bites his lip in contemplation before nodding. Yeah, I don't know if they'll let me do who I want to, though. Isuku frowns slightly, especially when his voice starts to sound scratchy, and Hizashi gives the boy's hand a squeeze. I don't think Miss Rainbow will mind who you want to choose. So you choose who you want to, Bunny. Isuku visibly lights up at Hizashi's words, smiling brightly and wiggling in place. Hizashi goes to ask who Izuku's thinking about drawing, but the front door opens and Kiko's walking in, tossing his backpack into the chair, shoe rack by the door, and he appears into the living room with a bright smile. You're home earlier. We could have picked you up along with Izuku. Aizawa comments, and Kiko's smile turns sheepish. I, forgot that we were leaving early today and got caught up talking with a friend. The hawk rubs the back of his head nervously, tense and unsure until Aizawa shakes his head and snorts. It's okay, it happens, but I'm getting you a phone, and you'll text us to pick you up the next time this happens, okay? His dad says in a voice that Keigo deems as teacher voice, mostly because he's only started using that tone when he started teaching. The hawk relaxes. I will, Dad. Promise. Keigo then turns his attention to Izuku, who's been bouncing up and down in place where he sat between Aizawa and Hizashi. The hawk's gaze turns to concern upon seeing dried tears and reddened eyes, but despite this, there's still a smile on Izuku's face, so Keigo doesn't let his own smile falter. His parents most likely had already helped, and the hatchling will most likely speak to him about it later, so instead of asking, he crouches down in front of Izuku and takes his face into his hands. Want to know what hero I learned about in class today? Keigo questions, and Izuku brightens a considerably large amount, making Hizashi and Shouta smile fondly. Yes! Isuku lets go of his parents' hands, opting to grab both of Keigo's instead and to get them off of his cheeks in order to launch himself into his brother's arms. The hawk is quick to catch his little brother and stand, not missing how Izuku nuzzles into his shoulder and smiles largely. Must be in a good mood, Keigo thinks, somewhat confused on where the tears had came from, but more intrigued by this large, cheesy smile. Make sure you do your homework, baby bird, Hizashi calls out as Keigo is dashing to his room speedily, making Izuku giggle and Keigo snicker. I did it in class already, you can check my backpack. The hawk calls back, quickly escaping through his bedroom door and closing it partly. He dumps Izuku onto his bed, making the boy laugh as he bounces around for a moment. Izuku still stayed in Keigo's room, of course, which technically made it their room, but their parents were slowly but surely moving Izuku's things into the spare bedroom, with a reassurance that Izuku can still stay in Keigo's bedroom, but they had to make room for it before it got too cluttered. Eventually, Izuku would have to move to the spare bedroom, but the boy still couldn't sleep alone without a nightmare, or not sleeping at all. Honestly, Keigo doesn't think that he can sleep without Izuku at his side quite yet either, so for now it works. All right. Keigo collapses onto his bed, landing onto his stomach in front of Izuku with an oomph, and Izuku sticks out his tongue at his winged brother, and Keigo does the same, the hatchling smiling and trying not to giggle when the hawk had flicked his nose. Now then, let me tell you about the... Huh? Keigo halts when Izuku's hands come up and start to sign speedily, and usually Keigo can read the classic Izuku speed, but this, well, it was too quick to keep up with. Hey. Keigo grabs those small hands, eyebrows furrowing in concern at Izuku's conflicted expression. Go a little slower for me, he asks in a soothing tone. The hatchling just bites his lip and shakes his head. Keigo raises an eyebrow at that, squeezing Izuku's hands gently as he tries to look for what was wrong. No, you can't go slower or you won't. The hatchling seems frustrated with himself, but resignation makes its way over his face soon enough and the boy releases his hands from Keigo's. Throat's starting to hurt. Want to tell you something? Izuku's fingers hesitate and he opens his mouth. Dad and Pop said I have a quirk, but, we don't know what it is yet. Or if I really have one. The hatchling's hands quickly sign a please don't leave me before Izuku can stop himself, and the 5-year-old clenches his hands nervously. Keigo's mouth is gaped open, processing the first part and quickly coming to terms with what he has to say at the second part. Izuku, hatchling, I would never leave you. His hands come up to rest on Izuku's cheeks once more, the hatchling leaning into the warmth they provide. I promise. We're brothers, after all, and I won't let your quirk come in between that, no matter if you have one or not. I love you, yeah? Keigo smiles, and Izuku would cry if he wasn't so happy to hear that. Love you, too. The hatchling brings his hands up, done with using his voice but not with talking. And if I wanted to be a hero, I could still be one, even without a quirk or a weak one. Well, no shit. Don't tell Dad I almost said a no-no word, but of course you can. Dad's a hero and he basically fights quirkless, right? So no matter what quirk you have, you'll kick at, don't tell Pops I almost said that. Keigo's accidental almost cursing has Izuku breaking into a fit of giggles, and the hawk smiles fondly. He sits up on the bed and scoops Izuku into his arms, making the boy squeal. Now that we know you're going to be a super cool hero, or a super cool whatever you want to be in the future, I can smell Katsudon, and I hear your tummy calling out for it. Keigo snickers when Izuku baps him on the cheek. So, the hawk places his baby brother onto the floor and rushes over to the door. Race you to the kitchen. No fair, Izuku signs quickly as he chases his brother, who's already at the door. Dumb bird brother, too fast, always getting a head start without any warning. All's fair in love and oof! And Keigo trips right over one of their cats, face planting onto the floor. He feels Isuku jump against the wooden surface below, bouncing over his big brother and running right into the kitchen. Keigo shoots their cat a death look, the cat in question being named French Fry, a real big baby, but is a real klutz too. French Fry just stalks off to where she was heading, which was most likely the litter box. Aizawa looks from the kitchen to the hallway, staring at Keigo on the floor with a raised eyebrow. What did I say about running in the halls? Keigo looks up, eyeing his baby brother who clings at Aizawa's leg, then shifts his gaze onto his dad. Let me see. Keigo moves to sit up rather than staying splat onto the floor. I think the words were, "Don't do it, you little shit." The hawk pauses to give Aizawa and Hizashi, who was in the kitchen but now very much hearing the chaos, to process it. Oh, wait, sorry, that was one of your students you were talking to. Keigo snickers smugly at the gasp that sounds from the kitchen and the deadpan look that Aizawa sends him. Isuku is giggling openly, which makes everyone soft and nothing serious. When did you turn into a smart aleck? Aizawa questions, his eyes squinted down at his evil, evil son. Keigo, in return, stands, taking a stroll over to hug his dad and to look up with innocent eyes. When I became an Aizawa, or, well, an Yamada. I had nothing to do with this development of you, Hizashi calls from the kitchen. Both Aizawa and Keigo watch as Isuku runs over to his papa and hugs his legs. Hizashi looks down from where he's cooking with a dramatically fond look. At least someone here is innocent. Then Izuku's signing something to Hizashi, and Hizashi gasps again, just as dramatically. Suku bunny! I can't believe this! Betrayal! The loud man fake whines and is wanting to collapse onto the ground for the dramatic effect, but unable to as he has to make sure that the food doesn't burn. But he does flick Izuku on the head, making the boy squeak and smile mischievously. And what did my dear hatchling say to you? Keigo questions with a curious grin as he was unable to see the signing. He said that I taught you both to be loud. Loud means that you can be proud. There's nothing wrong with that. Both Aizawa and Keigo snicker at that, making Hizashi pout and Izuku's smile widen. As they gather around the table and eat, Aizawa stops Keigo from getting a cookie for dessert. The hawk raises an eyebrow at his dad's hand on his wrist and smiles sheepishly when he's informed no dessert for cussing in front of Izuku, or just cussing at all, probably both. Izuku gets 3 cookies for being brave at school today and refuses to give one to his big brother, even when he begs dramatically. After Keigo and Izuku brush their teeth and go to bed, Izuku has a small nightmare that has him stressed out for the rest of the night. Keigo does his best to get his brother to sleep when he's woken up, but to no avail. He knows that he has school tomorrow, so the best thing to do would be to take Izuku to his parents' room so that they can help, but Keigo would have to sleep alone then. And he's done it before in the past, but now that just seems so lonely. He ends up sleeping with his parents and Izuku. The boy only gets 3 hours of sleep that night, but Keigo doesn't need to know that. Hizashi doesn't either because Aizawa gets about 4 hours of sleep on most days anyways, and they didn't need to worry over that. Well, Hizashi does need to know about Izuku's lack of sleep, and that means telling him about his own lack of sleep, so it seems like he has no choice. Not that Hizashi would be surprised about his own insomnia, but he clearly will be concerned about Izuku. In the morning, breakfast is being made by Hizashi, a quick one, while Aizawa's getting coffee ready and Izuku's asleep in Hizashi's arms. Keigo watches from where he sat at the kitchen table, frowning lightly at the fact that his brother was too tired and still slightly stressed out from last night to go to school. Aizawa ended up telling Keigo about Izuku's lack of sleep anyways, because they can't seem to hide anything from him. The hawk was way too aware of emotions, and this house is a mess of those emotions. Hey, Dad, Pops? The 2 adults look over to Keigo, heads tilted almost in sync. Scary, unless you know them both that well. What time will you be home tonight? If you're bringing Izuku to school with you, I just wanted to know, because usually you stay after school on Tuesdays, at least for an hour, then pick me up. Keigo questions, saying a small thank you when Hizashi places toast with peanut butter in front of him and sits down. Well, Aizawa hums as he also takes his seat with coffee. I personally have to talk with Nezu about kids I expelled today. The normal, but that shouldn't take longer than an hour. His eyes look over Keigo, calculating. Why? I was wondering if I could have a friend over to study and maybe stay a few days. Keigo looks down when he says that last part. It's so quiet that Aizawa almost misses it. Hizashi sadly does, as he wasn't the best at catching things the first time, especially if they were quick words. Keigo. Aizawa leans forward a bit, hands coming up to rest on the kitchen table. Which friend? His name is Touya. Keigo messes with his thumb, somewhat nervously avoiding Aizawa's gaze. Touya Todoroki. Aizawa's eyebrows raise at Keigo's nod of confirmation, and the tired man leans back in his chair this time, taking a large gulp of coffee before setting it back down onto the table. He seems to contemplate his next choice of words, and the silence makes Keigo antsy. Why do you want him to stay over for a few days? Because his dad is going to be out of town and his mom won't be there either, so, his dad usually hires someone to watch them. His parents grow concerned with Keigo's nervous voice and his ruffled wings, something that wasn't quite right here. And I think that'd be lonely. The care person who watches them usually lets them do whatever, but Touya says that it's really quiet and weird. I don't know, The hawk runs a hand through his blonde hair and sighs shakily. I want to help. Keigo. Aizawa's eyes close for a moment thinking. When his eyes open again, they're sharp and calculating. Are you okay with telling me everything that you know about Toya's situation? Shit. Keigo freely cusses in his head at this, knowing that Aizawa's too smart to buy a story that Touya would just be lonely. Yeah, the hawk says meekly, fidgeting as he forces himself to eat the toast before he starts talking, and then he explains, feeling guilty about exposing secrets that Touya wanted him to keep, but he's reassured by his parents that they can make it seem as if someone just figured it all out on their own. But Keigo would possibly have to tell Touya eventually. Especially considering Keigo would likely have to make his own statement about what Touya told him. Because yes, Aizawa and Hizashi will not let this go now that they know about Endeavor's bullshittery and abuse. How is this going to work? Keigo questions after he's done explaining Toya's situation, eyes settling on Hizashi, who's trying to make sure that Isuku doesn't wake up. The hatchling's making sniffling noises in his sleep, usually a clear indicator that he's about to wake up. Aizawa ends up shooing his husband off into the living room as he'll be fine with explaining on his own. I want you to go to school today and talk with Touya. Tell him he can stay over for a day or so longer if he wants to. Aizawa starts, eyes locking with Keigo's. I'll be talking with Nezu today about this, and if all goes well, Touya and his siblings can be wards of UA, just until their mother's okay enough to leave the hospital. Keigo stands from the table at that, hands resting on the table as he leans toward Aizawa. Are you serious? They won't have to go into the foster system? Keigo doesn't know why Aizawa doesn't just take them in himself, but he knows fully that Aizawa couldn't just take in 4 kids all at once, as much as he would love to, especially since he already had 2 problem children to take care of. Maybe if it was only 1 child, Aizawa would take them in along with Hizashi, but it's 4. 4 children who went through a whole lot of pain at a young age. They're the same way that Keigo and Izuku had been, anxious and too paranoid. At least Keigo thinks that's how they are. It's how he had been. Reluctant to rely on adults because they were the ones that had caused him pain in the first place, who caused Izuku pain. Keigo sees how Touya acts at school, secluded and shying away from social interactions. The teachers brush it off as him just being shy, but Keigo knows what shy looks like. And that wasn't it. The way that Touya would flinch at the name Todoroki being used instead of his first name, or any time that someone would get too close to him too quickly. He was the same way before his last name had gotten changed from Takemi to Imada. Okay, it's just Aizawa, not Imada, but Keigo thinks Imada sounds cool, alright? And he and Isuku only took Aizawa's last name for their own safety, but discreetly they've been the Yamazawas or the Imadas. Yeah, Keigo knows that it's creative. Before Hizashi taught him how to be, well, loud and proud, confident enough to make friends and to not be shy. Plus, Keigo knows how Touya acts really. He isn't shy or secluded. That's just not Touya. He may be a raging introvert, but he was sarcastic and sometimes snarky. He loved to poke at Keigo's wings and call him as many bird nicknames as he could, all supposed to be insulting but never malicious. He was protective, caring. Touya was one of the few that never judged Keigo when they first met. He's also pretty sure that Touya is the reason why one particular bully had stopped picking on Keigo and plucking his feathers and snapping them in 2. So yeah, no one knew Touya like he did. And since Touya was Toya. Keigo wanted to help. No, if they went into the foster system, they'd most likely get separated. It wouldn't be good for their mental health, Aizawa says in a matter-of-fact voice, but Keigo hears the caring tone hidden beneath it. So, Toya will stay here for a few days, if he wants to. His siblings will have to stay at home for now, but hopefully knowing that Nezu can get them out of there before Endeavor even gets back home is a possibility. Aizawa stands from the table, picking up his now empty coffee with him and walking over to put it in the sink. He steals a glance at the time and sighs. Come on, we're going to be late. Keigo lets out a surprised chirp when he sees the time and quickly rushes to the bathroom to brush his teeth. Aizawa shakes his head with a snort. This kid. His kid. Hizashi walks into the kitchen, still holding Isuku, but now the 5-year-old is in a comfortable bunny onesie, clutching his first plushie that he ever had gotten, which is also a bunny, tightly. The boy's eyes are bleary, riddled with exhaustion, as he looks over to Aizawa, Hizashi giving his husband a small smile. Aizawa returns the smile with a fond look, walking over and placing a hand on the top of Izuku's curls. Ready to see Yue for the first time, kiddo. And despite Izuku's tired eyes, he brightens up lightly. You get to see Yue before I do, hatchling. Keigo chirps as he runs in, book bag on and outfit for school messy. Izuku smiles slightly down at his brother, before resting his head against his papa's shoulder and shutting his eyes, mostly too tired to stay awake. Poor baby bunny, hopefully he'll be awake before we get back home, Hizashi hums as he strolls alongside his bird son and his cat husband. I don't think he'll miss out on meeting pros. Even sleep can't stop his need to ask questions. Aizawa comments, making Hizashi laugh lightly. Good point. Hizashi opens the car door and places Isuku in the car seat, buckling him up with care. The loud man leaves a light kiss on the boy's curls before bringing up the bunny hood on his onesie and placing it over the wild hair. We might have to hide him from Nemuri, otherwise she'll never let him go. Aizawa snorts as he gets in the passenger seat. Yeah, that'll be the least of our problems, considering we never let her see them both unless it's a holiday. Keigo snickers at that. As much as this family loved Nemuri as an aunt of sorts, she was also very overwhelming. Izuku needed his own space with his family, and if that space was invaded, often he'd grow stressed. It's obviously gotten better over the years, but they have to make sure that they keep up a healthy living space. It's only been a year and a few months, but they still have a long way to go before Izuku stops having nightmares and Keigo can confidently sleep by himself at night. But that's okay, because as their parents, Hizashi and Aizawa will always be there for them, no matter how many road bumps they face. They drop Keigo off at school, Aizawa getting a small glimpse of Touya Todoroki, when the boy waves at his son, lazily, with the same fond look that Aizawa will often give to Hizashi. Touya! Keigo chirps out his greeting along with a smile, happy and bright. His wings flutter when Toya's eyes soften, giving him a small wave. Hey, Kei. Touya smirks mischievously when Keigo huffs and pouts, arms crossing. I told you to choose a new nickname. That's the one my little brother uses for me. The hawk flicks Touya on the forehead, and the red-headed boy just snatches his wrist and has a shit-eating grin thrown at his winged friend. Do you want me to go back to using Chicken Nugget for you, then? Touya mocks, and Keigo just grumbles, releasing his wrist from Toya's hand before grabbing the boy's hand himself and drag him into the school. We're already late. Let's not get detention again. Keigo's cheeks puff out when Touya stops them before they enter the classroom, the boy staring down at his blonde friend. Did you ever tell your parents about that? Touya questions, and if he tenses up in light worry, Keigo doesn't seem to notice. The hawk rolls his eyes. Of course I did. I had to. Sensei called my pops first, at least, so I didn't get Dad's wrath of disappointed dad glare. Besides, if I lie, I get 2 disappointed looks, and one is sadder than the other. Touya relaxes somewhat at the words, but then raises an eyebrow. Your brothers? No, of course not. I'm talking about pops. I just get guilt-tripped by my brother until I give him my dessert. Keigo pouts, and Touya snorts, shaking his head as he opens the door to the classroom. Sounds absolutely terrible. Touya whispers as he walks into class, eyes trained on the floor as to not make eye contact with anyone in the classroom. Keigo merely follows with another eye roll, taking his seat beside the red-headed boy. Anyways, you want to come over for a few days? Toya's eyes flicker over to the chicken nugget, before focusing back on the whiteboard at the front of the room as the teacher luckily comes in late. Yeah, sure. Touya doesn't smile when Keigo's wings flutter in joy. He doesn't. All right, everyone. This concludes Chapter 5 of Fallen Baby Birds. Chapter 6 will be next. Hope you guys are still enjoying this one. And as always, thank you so much for listening.